Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.
Welcome back. From the time he was little, our next veteran loved airplanes, but his Air Force story begins with a coin collection and a presidential letter.
KSN's Hannah Adamson and photojournalist Nick Kiefer explain in this week's Veteran Salute.
As a kid, Terry Marr looked forward to receiving coins from around the world sent to him by his Air Force neighbor. Inspired by his example, Marr decided he too would join someday. At the same time, his grandmother lost family members in Vietnam and wrote to President Nixon to address her grievances. The president actually wrote her back, saying her first-generation grandchildren would not be required to serve. But that didn't stop Marr from pursuing his dream like his neighbor.
I always looked up to him, and he looked so sharp in his dressed uniform, and I said, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. Specifically, I wanted to be a crew chief on KC-135s because he said crew chiefs fly with it, and you can go all around the world. You have to grab a rope and swing across a pit.
Joining the Air Force in 1977, Terry Marr started out maintaining KC-135s based in Minot, North Dakota.
This was the first KC-135 assigned to Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota.
He got to fly 3 times around the world by the time he was 21, but not without death-defying experiences. Marr recalling one particular incident in Panama.
We had just refueled the KC-135. We weren't on the ground long, and when we took off, there was a big explosion, and it just rocked our aircraft in the air. That explosion was one of the guerrillas fired a shoulder-launched grenade at our fuel bladder that we had just refueled from. There was enough in there to make quite a mushroom cloud.
His experience as a crew chief would land him in Okinawa, Japan, maintaining E-3 Sentries, a brand new state-of-the-art aircraft at the time.
E-3A, AWACS with the radar dome on top. It had in-flight air traffic control capabilities and identification of aircraft.
In 1990, Marr would be stationed in upstate New York, but it wouldn't be long before he was back overseas.
I was on KC-135R models, and of course Desert Shield kicked off, had to deploy for Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Marr deploying to the Gulf, serving as a crew chief for a KC-135R model. Marr recalling Scud missiles flying overhead near his base.
To me, they were like just bathtubs full of stuff. You never know what was in them or where they were going to go. And the alarms, sirens kept going off that we had to put our chem gear back on.
But his time overseas wouldn't last too long.
And then they found out I had instructor experience.
Marr was moved to Griffiths Air Force Base to train airmen on KC-135Rs. When the base closed, Marr moved his training program to McConnell Air Force Base.
Came to McConnell in 1994. And then the commander asked me to be the first sergeant for the logistics group.
A few years later, Marr would be back on the flight line as a production superintendent.
I was in charge of all the airplanes that fly for that particular day on my shift.
Marr would spend 24 years and more than 3,000 hours of flight time in the Air Force, retiring in 2001.
We're trained to do what we're supposed to do, and you don't give it a second thought, you just do it. Absolutely, I'd do it again.
Marr would go on to start his own maintenance business where he still works today. And despite her initial reluctance towards Marr joining the Air Force, his grandmother was proud of him for serving and was even prouder when he retired. Here for you, Hannah Adamson, KSN News 3.
On behalf of Devon James Injury Lawyers, we're honored to recognize this week's veteran, Master Sergeant Terry Marr, who's retired from the United States Air Force. Thank you so much for your service, Sergeant.
Thank you for everything that you do for our veterans, and this is going to be paid forward to our local veterans organization to continue helping veterans.
Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.